Hey there, it's Speebs, aka Sneaked from Lightbringer here. I'm making these videos to dissect some of the keys me and my team are running this season, that being Season 4 of Shadowlands. I'm hoping I can improve as a player by making these videos, and if they help all three of my viewers, well, that's great too. Our Mythic Plus group has gotten 3K rating the last 3 seasons, and this season we swapped our comp a bit. I'm maining Rogue for the first time in like 6 years, and I absolutely love this class to death, so I'm super excited to play it. Alrighty, so I'm about 293 in this dungeon you're about to see. I've just picked up my normal Faded Edge of Night using my first NR token and can't upgrade to Heroic until next week. I got a 304 main hand from the vault and a Stone Legion Heraldry, and I have command as my trinkets. The rest of my gear could use some optimization, but that's why we're running dungeons. It's week 4 of the patch, and our average eye level is about 293.7 according to Raider.io. For our comp in this Upper Karazhan 20, we're running our mains here. We've got a Prot Warrior, a Resto Shaman, a BM Hunter, Destruction Warlock, and myself as the Outlaw Rogue. Resto Shaman is really an amazing healer for Upper Karazhan. Thanks for Interrupt. It's super helpful to have that 4th, 3, and 5th Interrupt on Medivh. And Prot Warrior is an absolute beast this patch, combined with Spell affecting the last boss for just amazing damage. The affixes for this dungeon are Bursting, Storming, and Shrouded. Bursting being damage to the party when a mob dies, and it can stack up. Storming being the annoying tornadoes you'll see all over the place, and Shrouded being the amazing Death Regimes of Season 4. I'm running the standard Venthyr build with the Concealed Blunderbuss Legendary combined with, of course, my Unity. And with that, we're buffed, we're well fed, we're getting underway. I've tricked my tank here using my focus macro. I picked up the crit buff, which is the way to go. And the Beginning Trash isn't too exciting. We're kicking the Ghost Cass and cleaving down the mobs. Up next here, we've got a little bit of movement skip. That probably saves like 6 seconds, but anyone with a teleport or a grappling hook can jump across the gap here. I use a mouse over macro for my targeted movement abilities, and I've got the macro in the video description below here. Up next, we've got the Miniboss Zelgamox, and I'm swapping to Wound Poison here before engaging. Any Mortal Strike effect is a huge boon on this mob as it will reduce her healing and therefore make her die faster and make the key faster. I make my first kind of minor mistake of the key here by using Cloak of Shadows to greed and stay in for the Shadow Eruption. The better play is to use Cloak of Shadows on the AoE Blood Soak. Not only does it reduce my damage taken, but it also drops her healing by 1/5 for the duration of the cloak because she's not sucking my blood. You also saw me use Blind on the bat here. My team is excellent at getting the bats, but because we aggro the boss with just the tank and myself, I decided to blind the first one. Gonna speed it up here. Mob straightforward after that, so we're gonna run out from the Shadow Eruption and get back in. I'm using my rogue abilities to blast this boss. Next up, we've got these robots that I absolutely despise. They're stairs. It's apparently a safe spot, but I'm too stupid to use them properly and get my first cheat death proc of the dungeon. I thought I was safe, but apparently I was in danger, and here we are. We kill this mob here. We move on to the next robot mob. Nothing too exciting here. Just gotta kick its butt and pick up your soul. I didn't get the soul proc, so I don't get the free damage. I'm very sad about that, but that's alright. We're going to speed through these trash packs here. They're pretty boring. We realized after the first pack that despite it being fortified, we can double pull these without a lot of danger beyond the bursting stacks. We end up pulling the Curator here, but the mob is easily reset by walking out of the room. At one point here, we're going to get to 7 bursting stacks, and our Shaman, I believe, told us to stop doing damage, and we said no. Monkey Brain engaged, hit button. But thankfully, he pops some cooldowns, and we get through the 7 stacks here before we die. Alright, on to Curator. I really think Outlaw shined super hard in this boss, mostly thanks to the Acrobatic Strikes ability. The extra 3 yards we get from the talent is huge, and everyone knows you have to appreciate every extra inch you're given. I'm keeping Blade Flurry up here and DPSing the ads as much as possible. Our tank is doing an excellent job of taunting the sparks as they fly into melee, allowing myself and our BM Hunter to cleave these mobs down before they get too overwhelming for our group. As you can see here, we're being a bit sloppy on positioning and placement. If this was a higher key or a tyrannical key, we would likely be punished for this poor positioning. But that's okay because it's not, and we're crushing the boss here. So we're going to enter our first evocation phase, and I've got my flagellation and cooldowns ready. We're saving heroism for Medivh because we just hate that guy, and we're still scarred by the first couple weeks of the patch when he was an absolute beast before all of the nerfs that Upper Karazhan was given. And with that, we keep blasting the boss. Nothing too exciting happening here. I'm using my rogue abilities to kick his butt. I'm rolling my bones as best I can. As a new rogue player, I struggled a little bit for the roll of bones until I realized there was a weak aura out there that helped me understand when to do that. If you looked at Rogue Theory Crafting before, you know there's a complex order of operations for when you should reroll. The weak aura is a great filler for that. As a new rogue player for this patch, again, I didn't have like the 2 years of experience on when I should be doing it. I find the weak aura super helpful. It might not be 1,000% optimal, but it is definitely more optimal than me thinking about when I should be rerolling and when I should be saving my bones. That came out totally fine and normal. We finished off the evocator. Bada bing, bada boom. All right, up next here, you can see I'm going to use Distract on this mob as he's on the right side of the room. It's going to give my team an extra 10 seconds to sneak by here. We're going to kill this bat real quick, who's secretly a Dreadlord to get the extra stats and the sweet percentage. And then we've got our first and only Shroud kip of this key. But this is a really easy Shroud skip to pull off. We're going to get the team together. I'll hit my Shroud button. The weak aura is going to count it down. We're going to step on the proper floor tiles so we do not get knocked out of stealth and murdered by this terrible, terrible man here who has been nerfed but is still kind of mean and is worth skipping for sure. But we sneak by and we're getting ready for Shade of Medivh. So this guy is no longer as mean as he was, but before we got into this dungeon, we had a little discussion around what to do around the classic move of Shade of Medivh puts down Flame Breath, we can't move out of, combined with the affix of Storming. So we're definitely worried that if we got a Flame Wreath, we might just die because of the tornado knocking us out of the Flame Wreath. Thankfully, that doesn't happen here, as we end up getting Ceaseless Winter combined with the beautiful Sparkly Birds of Murder. But another really important thing for this is just thinking about how we're using Cloak in this dungeon. So you can use Cloak to actually soak the tornado. So if I was in Flame Wreath and there was a tornado coming towards me, I could just use Cloak of Shadows and let the tornado pass through me, and nothing terrible would happen, and that's awesome. Cloak is an amazing ability. Always think about how you're using it in dungeons. The other important thing to think about for this boss fight is your interrupts. So we're super spoiled in that we have 5 in our group, but something that makes this boss so much easier on voice is really communicating your interrupts. And this is something that my group has gotten better at this whole expansion. But you need to be calling your interrupts and marking them and really communicating what's going on. There's nothing worse than 4 people using an interrupt on the same mob and then it gets off like a cast that heals for 100% of his life. With Shade, it's even more important because not only does this mob absolutely slap, but like if you have a Flame Wreath on a target who's about to get blasted, any spell that goes off on them will likely kill them and therefore kill everyone. So what we do is make sure we're calling interrupts and we're being really aggressive about it. So when it's my turn for interrupt here, you can't hear our voice chat here, but I'm saying I've got next, I've got next, I've got next, while the next person is thinking about who they're going to be interrupting. Another cool thing you can do if you'd like is have someone assigning interrupts. So we do this sometimes. So by that I mean I'm saying, all right, I've got this one. Fuzzy, you're getting next. All right, Lakini, you're getting next. All right, X, you're getting next. Having that person calling out who the interrupts is means you're not going to have any confusion around what's going on. But we do a great job here. The boss goes down. We're absolutely crushing it. And now we're going to slowly fly down here. All right, we're on the ground now. Nothing too exciting is happening here. We're going to run forward, kicking this mob's butt on the way. We realized after the fact we should have killed a second rat here, just for the percentage, but that's okay. Additionally, I make a little bit of a minor error here. Not really a big one, but I could have tricked the tank and then used my movement abilities to get over to that stupid mob to aggro him onto the tank and save us a little bit of time. Something I normally do but didn't for this key for some reason. But our tank has leap up, so it's not a huge deal. Alright, so on to Mana Devourer. So this boss is super cool, especially on Fortified when you can definitely greed way more orbs and take a little bit extra damage. So you're going to see him spawn some orbs here in a minute, and essentially the orbs do a dot on you, and on a tyrannical key, the dot can start hurting, especially beyond 3 or 4 stacks. But it also gives you a nice damage buff, and you'll see throughout this boss encounter here that I am just being left in the dust here. I'm not being greedy picking up these orbs, and that was definitely a mistake. I end up being top damage to this boss with only 1 stack, which makes me super annoyed. At one point here, you can see the tank is going to grab 4 orbs, and I call him a greedy bastard, and he laughs at me, and that's totally fine. We're having a good time. It's not a big deal. I need to be more greedy picking up these orbs on this boss. That's on me. Another cool thing you can do as a rogue on this boss, of course, use Cloak of Shadows to pick up these orbs without getting stacks. That's going to be more important on tyrannical keys, because if the boss, of course, gets all the stacks, he explodes, killing everyone, and that's very sad. However, Another cool thing you can do is using feint. So it takes a bit of practice because boss has this AO ability called Energy Discharge, and it's not really tracked on any weak auras or dungeon add-ons I've found, but he usually does it just after all the orbs would have gone into him. So if you look at all the orbs and after they get soaked by your team or going to the boss, you can think, okay, this guy is going to use Energy Discharge the next couple seconds here. And in that case, I can use Feint to reduce the damage from that ability by 40%, which is huge. You can see here, I managed to pull it off, I think, 2 times on this boss pull. And if you look at my party frames here, you can see how low my party's health is compared to mine. And that's all thanks to the power of Feint. You can, of course, use Cloak for this as well, but because you're likely using Cloak to soak and drop the orb stacks, it's way better to use Feint. And even if you miss it, I think if you're using Feint, that's, you're being a good player, you're helping your team out. And that's what being a good Mythic Plus party is. It's about supporting each other emotionally, mentally, and also reducing damage taken as much as possible. That said, the boss is dead, and we're moving on. We realized during this trash here that we needed an extra pack because we accidentally skipped a rat. That's okay, that's life. We're going to kill these mobs' butts. They're usually a little more dangerous, but I think they've been nerfed quite a bit, and we managed to plow through them pretty easily. We're going to keep soaking up the orbs here, just like the boss. They have the same mechanic. All right, now we're running forward here. Uh, the current meta is to skip all these mobs. They're incredibly dangerous. They have stupid mechanics that can kill you and knock you off the platform. And there's so much trash in this dungeon that it doesn't make a lot of sense to fight these guys if you can avoid it. The easiest way to skip them is using one of your hidden spirit potions. You can use Shroud, but thankfully my team has their abilities up, so we're not going to use it. But if you are going to Shroud, something you have to do is this move I'm pulling off here. So I'm going to distract these first 2 mobs to the right here and then pass on the left. This is super important because this mob is very good at seeing through stealth for whatever reason. It might be the angle, it might be something else, I'm not entirely sure, but you have to use a distract here. So you want to pull up a little bit ahead of your team, tell your team to wait till the distract's done, hit the distract, and then get your team ready. So this is a really long run, and with Shroud, you can sometimes make it maybe. You definitely want your team to pre-pop their movement abilities before you use Shroud. So the order of operations here, I'm going to put it on the screen, is distract this mob to the right, team uses movement abilities, hit Shroud, hold W key, pass on the left side, keep running. We end up losing our hunter here. His potion decides that it's not time to be invisible, and thankfully we have a warlock so we can summon him through. It is possible to res because of the 100-yard range on the AoE res, but it's hard to pull off sometimes, especially if they're super far down the ramp. But it's best to skip them. Try it, practice it. If you can't get it, I would say keep practicing it. It's worth skipping these mobs. They're horrific. They're not worth the percentage points that they are on paper. And if you skip them, you're saving your team a lot of time in this dungeon. We're moving on to the chess events. Nothing super exciting here. We're going to use our Blade Flare. We're going to cleave down a single target. We get super lucky during this chess event here, and the wolf decides he wants to party with the king after we kill the first one. So we're able to cleave down that second wolf while fighting the boss still. Or not the boss, but the king. And that means we're going to have a very short chess event. You can see here that I decide to not move when the rook jumps beside me because I'm a fool, and I get my second cheap death proc of the dungeon. That said, though, we take down chess event without a lot of difficulty. We crush these mobs, and we're going to move on to the last boss of the dungeon. Alright, like I said at the beginning, we have a prot warrior, so he is going to be calling for interrupts because when he has spell reflect, he gets just obliterate the boss and make us all look like absolute chumps. It's a lot of fun for him, it's a lot of fun for us, it's a lot of fun for this beautiful beholder mob as well because he wants to die and give us his sweet loot. You can see here that I am an absolute moron and accidentally bait the fell beam to the side and then walk into it. This was a huge mistake. I didn't mean to do this, but I get a battle res from my warlock here. We talked about that after the key was done and thought maybe that's the play. Maybe if you've got the battle res, you just sacrifice somebody so you can have more uptime on the boss. This is something that we've done before and is kind of the play in dungeons in this expansion even. So if you remember back to Shadowlands Season 1 through 3, rocking away at Necrotic Wake, last boss, Nalthur the Rhymebinder? Ugh, that's a hard one to say out loud. if you had someone downstairs after they got thrown away by his ability, you would just sacrifice them. They would just jump off the edge. You'd battle res them, and that was enough damage uptime to make up for the fact that you had 5 seconds of death. I'm not sure if that's a play or not, but that's what we did here. We might try it again. We might not. The better play would have been for me to use my Cloak of Shadows or just avoided this. I've been killed by this ability in the last 2 dungeons I've run. He hates me, and I actually held my flagellation in case I got targeted first again. I might be a jerk next time and try using like Cloak of Shadows or not Cloak of Shadows, but Vanish rather, to try to make him target someone else rather than me, so I can be greedy, get my uptime in. But I didn't, and I died and was punished for it. But that said, we're absolutely obliterating this boss. We don't get the orbs that he casts, the chaotic orbs, he spell and dodge, because we're crushing him so hard. Move on to the next platform. I'm going to use my hook here combined with my Door of Shadows to quickly get to the boss and start DPSing before he gets that first grenade cast off. You're going to see us milk this phase really hard here. Milking is a term you might have heard before, and it basically means that the boss is going to transition to a phase soon, but it's doing something. It's using an ability, it's running around like an idiot, it's like casting a spell that means it's going to delay that transition. And anytime you can milk a boss, it's great. It means your next phase is going to be a little bit easier, and especially on this boss, when the last phase is so difficult, or can be difficult if it goes long, it's amazing to get a great milk phase like we did here. So you can see the boss is sub 30% as we go to the last platform. We're going to use our movement abilities here. I'm going to Door of Shadows again up front. I'm going to use my Tricks of the Trade and immediately start blasting the boss. I'm going to rely on my tricks to move any threat from these mobs from me onto the tank. And I've already called that I'm going to be the kicker for this ability. Of course, we don't want him casting his cast because that leads to way too many mobs on the platform. We probably could have let him cast it and been okay still, but it's always best practice to do the mechanics properly. So we end up just kicking the boss's butt here. I'm using my Blade Flurry. I might be padding a little bit. I'm not entirely sure. But we end up finishing the dungeon with plenty of time to spare. We get yet another Eye of Command. We're living our best lives. That's our third one for this season. You get an Eye of Command. You get an Eye of Command. I get an Eye of Command. Everyone's happy. And with that, that is the end of the dungeon and my first video upload here. If you enjoyed this content, please let me know. If you didn't, please don't let me know. I have a fragile ego, and I appreciate it not being bruised. Thank you so much. My cat says hi, and I'll see you in the next one.